Alright, start of a new build. That black FX single I was building, I got tired of it, I got aggravated with it. I bought it off a guy. I was gonna finish it, but since I never started it and I didn't start to build it, and I got it after someone had their hands in it, I just got disgusted with it and I sold it to someone else. New series build. Got a Cub Cadet, another Cub Cadet. It's all stripped down, all the parts, everything. It was a complete mower deck and everything, stripped it down. I'll add a picture in, probably about right now, so you can see that. Alright, full mower, 1971. So this chassis is a 1971 Cub Cadet, and it is in immaculate shape. Immaculate. There's no rust on the frame at all. No rust at all. A little bit on the fenders, on the back side of the fenders, but other than that though, no rust. But this will be a GP or GP twin. And I'm going to try to stick to it this time and actually do a build video where I actually cover everything I'm doing. So I skipped the part about tearing it down because that's boring. You don't want to see me just tearing it down. There's the dash, there's the hood. Those are front wheels I'm going to use for it. The tires, I'll get that in a later video. Only couple things I got to tear down left. Gas tank's got to come out. What's nice is it's got a bracket for my fenders, which I'm going to reuse, but the tank, I got to pull the tank out itself. They had a hitch on the back here. Cut that off last night so I could stand it up, start tearing it apart. A couple things I'm going to start doing. I kind of just stripped it all out. It's all pretty much empty in there. Couple of things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out where my rear axle is going to go. So you see I just marked it. This was the old transmission plate for the transmission. I'm going to mark it and just cut it a square out of that. Clean all this area up so when I get my cassette plates, I can weld my cassette plates in here and get my axle drop correct. And by cutting it open in the bottom and leaving the bottom open, I can drop the whole axle out on both ends completely out of the chassis without having to pull everything off and slide it out the side. Now the front here, this has got a big beefy front end to it. Everything's 1/4 inch steel, so it's real heavy. The chassis is heavy but it's strong, so I don't need to add, I'm not going to add any major bracing to it. What I'm doing here is I'm taking an inch, because my axle beam is an inch, inch and a quarter, inch and a half, somewhere around there. I'm going to take an inch and a half out of the frame, out of the front. So when I cut this down, I'm going to cut this down here flat, make that flat with the bottom of the chassis, and then cut this here, so when I put my axle beam in here, I don't have all this extra weight, for one, and then two, it'll be nice and smooth, and I have an extra place here to weld my axle. I have a place on the side to weld my axle, and then on the upside I can weld it on the other side of the axle. So I'm going to go ahead, cut these pieces out, and I'll show you the progress after that. Alright, both those rear axle pieces are cut out on both ends. See, that was welded. They welded that to a piece of 1/4 inch, then another piece of 1/4 inch over that. There it is right there. Both are cut out, so I'll slip the axle in right here. I've got the two slits cut out in the front on both ends. I just got to come across here and slit that out. But now what I'm going to do is, because that's going to be the hard part, the front, I'm going to come across the back here and trim this level all the way down to the back, so it's a nice flush mount. And then I'll come back here, remove this pan completely, pull the screws out, clean everything up, bare metal, and I'm going to tack this in place, pull these screws out, weld the holes up, stitch this up, so that way it braces that whole rear section of the mower. Alright, now where I figure out where I'm going to mount my axle, I'm going to leave this bit here as a place to weld on. Same thing with the top there, I just got to clean it up. Where I'm going to mount my axle is right in this square here. In this square over here. This exactly is 1 inch and a 1/16 over here, and it's exactly 1 inch and a 1/16 over here. You need to make sure this stuff is level. This is just as an example. But that would sit in there like that. Little overhang, but I'll put it flush just to show you. Okay, and that has a nice tight fit. The axle will go through there, and again it's 1 1/16 to here on each side. Now if I had 1 1/4 on this side and 1 1/16 on this side, basically the axle would be sitting like this. Over dramaticated, but it'd be sitting like that. It would mess up the handling of the machine. So all that's got to be square and level. If not, if you don't make it square, you're going to have problems with it handling down the road. But this is just basically like a raw piece of tube. This is what I'd be using. Not this piece because it's damaged. It's just a mock-up tube. 1 1/4" tube, steel tube. I believe it's 14 gauge, 16 or 14 gauge. What I'm going to do is clean this up in here. Clean it up inside here. All along the side. Clean it up here. Here. All along the bottom here. And when I get my axle made, I'll put it in here. I'll weld it on the inside, up the sides here, on the outside, all over. Do 2 stitch welds down the bottom here, and after that I'll come in with the cutter and do a nice cut at the bottom so there's nothing hanging low. It's nice and smooth with the axle. Same thing with these pieces. These are the self-tappers that were built into the frame. I'll just grind these down smooth. Same thing, clean all this stuff up. Alright, the rear's all cleaned up. I rebolted this bracket back in, cleaned it all up. I'm going to do a couple tack welds and pull these out and fully weld the holes in for this backing plate here. Same thing with this side, it's all cleaned up. The front's all cleaned up. Nice and new and shiny. It's amazing what 1971 steel cleans up at. But yep, I can go ahead and start welding this into place to brace the rear section of the chassis. And after that, we'll start messing with the rest of the inside. Alright, further progress. I've welded that rear plate completely locked in place. Put a little stubs so the whole chassis is sitting exactly at 4 inches. Those are 4-inch stubs. When I go to mount the axle, I don't have any problem getting the height right. I have the front the same way. But this is kind of a mock-up of what I'm going for. We're allowed to go 40 inches wide. Kind of got the hood pushed a little bit further than I should. Remember, I cut that front piece off to gain clearance so I could put that axle there. But we're allowed to go 40 inches wide on length. That's what the tire lines up at. There's the front. There's what the front would look like, all done and completed. I don't know if I'll drop the hood that low. I like the hood being dropped that low. Gives it a nasty look to it. But that's kind of what I'm going for there. These tires help the look of it too. These tires are a bit wider. What are these tires? I think these are 13 by 650s on aluminum rims. But that's the progress so far today. I gotta wait on parts, so next week I should be mounting the front axle. I'll have the front axle done. I'll get the spindles and all that done. I need to order some hubs for the front so I can bolt it onto the spindle. And then I'll start getting the rear casted plates, and I'll borrow some tires so I can at least get that in there. We could get a nice look-see on how it's going to look. Dash over there. That's just something cool about Cub Cadet. It saves me money. That's an actual bearing that goes through the dash. And it's fine. It's not locked up or nothing. I'm just going to lube it up and reuse that. And all I got to do is put a bearing on the bottom section there, so it holds the bottom, and then on the steering will go through the bottom of the mower. But that's it for right now. I'll get back with you next week as far as the build goes, and when I get them parts.